a terror group in northern Syria which has become a critical pawn in the fight against Daesh. The PKK-affiliated YPG. It was once outlawed by Washington, but now the PKK-YPG is a key US ally, and Ankara isn't happy. The US says the YPG is the only group capable of defeating Daesh in its de facto capital of Raqqa.
We're keenly aware of the security concerns of our coalition partners in Turkey. We want to reassure the people and the government of Turkey that the US is committed to preventing additional security risks and protecting our NATO ally.
The YPG swept through northern Syria last year on the back of US air power. It captured and occupied Arab-majority towns on the pretext of fighting Daesh. So Turkey launched an offensive last August to stop the YPG's advance. But more US support is now causing even more anxiety in Ankara.
YPG'ye verilen silah destekleri, ki bunlar ağır silahlar, sıradan silahlar değil. Bunların bütün belgeleri elde, bunu kendileri de kabul ediyor nitekim. İşte böyle bir durum var. Bu tabii bizim Amerika Birleşik Devletleri ile olan stratejik ilişkilerimize, stratejik mutabakatımıza ters düşen.
In supporting the YPG, the US has found itself in unusual company. Reports suggest the YPG-dominated Syrian Democratic Forces plan to hand over ISIS-held Raqqa to groups aligned with the Syrian regime. If the reports are to be believed, the US may find itself allied with a group which is linked to Bashar al-Assad. US support for the YPG isn't the only sticking point in relations. There's also Washington's sheltering of the shadowy figure Fetullah Gulen. To his followers, Gulen is the Imam of the universe. But for Turkey, the reclusive cleric who lives in the US state of Pennsylvania is the man responsible for one of the bloodiest events in recent Turkish history. 265 people were killed in a failed coup attempt on July 15th. It happened as parts of the military turned against the state. Fethullah Gulen is now a major source of friction between Washington and Ankara. Turkey wants him extradited to face coup and terror-related charges. The US says Turkey hasn't provided any proof of Gulen's complicity.
Gerek belgeler noktasında, gerekse atılacak adımlar ve bu şahsın, bu FETÖ terör örgütünün başının tabii bizim stratejik ortağımız olan Amerika'da barınıyor olması.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan is hoping for a fresh start when he meets Donald Trump for the first time. But the distance in their respective positions regarding the YPG and Fethullah Gulen may prove too wide for the two leaders to bridge. Ali Mustafa, The Newsmakers.
Well, I'm joined now by Jane Kander. She's a journalist for the pro-government newspaper, the Daily Sabah, and also a board member of the AK Party's Istanbul branch. And from Ankara, I'm joined by Güne Yildiz. He is a Turkish and Kurdish affairs analyst. Thanks both so much for joining us. Güne, let me begin with you. How does, better said, why does the United States really believe that arming the YPG, even at Turkey's expense, is the single best defense against Daesh in Syria?
Well, Andrea, it's not necessarily the ideal choice for U.S. as well, but if you look at the options the United States have on the ground in Syria, the YPG has proved itself in the eyes of U.S. strategic the people who make strategic calculations on behalf of the U.S. government as the best choice to counter Daesh. If you look at other options, for example, Turkey-backed rebels who captured with the help of the Turkish army from an area from Jarablus to Elbab, the calculations on the side of the U.S. military is apparently that the capacity of U.S. pro-Turkey rebels is lower than the YPG. YPG took more ground from Daesh than any other actor, including Iraqi army or Syrian regime or Russians or others. But I think what the U.S. also believes is that there's the dichotomy between Turkey and the YPG isn't necessarily a real one. Some people believe that it's a false dichotomy, and they can continue working with the Turkish government as well as the YPG all at the same time.
Okay, Jane, why is it a mistake for the U.S. to arm the YPG? And ultimately, what do you think will be the consequences?
Well, I must agree with Güney that the Americans have calculated and they have come to the conclusion that the YPG is the best troops on the ground to combat Daesh. But the problem is that the YPG is openly affiliated with the PKK, and there's absolutely nobody who denies this affiliation. In fact, the former ambassador to Syria, Ford, just stated a few days ago that there's a clear affiliation with them. Abdullah Öcalan's brother, Osman Öcalan, established the YPG. The PKK is a known terrorist group. It's recognized by the American government as a terrorist group. It's on the FTO. To work with a terrorist group, whether it's an affiliation or the terrorist group itself, to achieve a military aim is never a wise movement. Feeding arms and military weapons to this group, which is on the Turkish border, is a direct threat to Turkey's integral security.
So, Jane, what does Turkey suggest then as an alternative to arming the YPG or SDF in order to defeat Daesh?
What they have been suggesting over and over again is to work with the Free Syrian Army, to work with the other groups, which Turkey has been training, to help train them.
But the United States says the Free Syrian Army includes groups that are far more dangerous, those also affiliated with al-Qaeda.
There are issues there, I can understand that. And Turkey has also offered to come and help itself. I mean, the best solution for what is going on in Syria for the short term is to establish a buffer zone, a no-fly zone. And then for the groups, the interested parties, be it Russia, America, come up with a plan to work. But to arm terrorist groups of any sort, of any ilk, is not the right solution here.
So, Guna, you admit it's kind of the U.S. seeing this as the least bad alternative, but tell me, how staunch is government and public support in the United States for this strategy to arm the YPG? When we listen especially to Senate leaders like Lindsey Graham, and actually I believe we have a soundbite to play from him so we can hear that there is very serious opposition to the official U.S. position on arming the YPG. Let's see if we can play that for you.
PKK, a terrorist organization in the eyes of the Turkish government?
The PKK is a terrorist organization not only in the eyes of the Turkish government, but in the eyes of the U.S. government as well, Senator.
Is it surprising to you that the Turks may be upset with us by arming the YPG in Syria, since they're so closely aligned with the PKK?
No, it's not. No, it's not at all, Senator. We have let me just clarify. Let me just say that, and the chairman's been involved in this as well. We have extensive consultations with the Turks.
So Turkey is okay with this?
They're not okay with that.
I just got back from Turkey. They're not okay with this. They think this is the dumbest idea in the world, and I agree with them.
So, Gune, we're talking about the rift between Turkey and the United States, but we can hear from Lindsey Graham that there is also a rift within the U.S. government about this policy. How serious is that rift today?
I think President Trump's decision to arm YPG directly shows that the side who favors working with YPG is stronger. But I have advised UK politicians on relations with Turkey and also with the Kurds in Syria and in Iraq. And in the meantime, I've also spoken to lots of many previous or current member of the administration in the U.S. U.S. officials, and the rift I've realized is between some people think that arming the YPG, if you look at the situation from a point of view that YPG is now a U.S. ally which controls 2 dams in Syria, which means huge access to electricity and energy, and also large oil fields, the main oil fields in Syria, and also water, the Euphrates, and large agricultural areas. You might think that U.S. is now allied with one of the most strongest forces on the ground, which has access to lots of resources in Syria. On the other hand, some people in the administration told me, formerly in the administration told me personally that there's a fear that if U.S. helps YPG and elevates them to a huge strength, then there's a risk that the YPG will start to work with Iran, which others argue that YPG and their parent political party, the group, the PKK, and their allies, PEJAK in Iran, has also fought against Iran at the same time, so there's not a huge risk for YPG to work with Iran. Another concern in the administration is that YPG is a left-wing group, which is not normally an ally for the U.S.
Okay, very quickly, Jane, just last question. President Erdogan will be speaking to President Trump, actually in the coming hours. How much do you expect him to achieve on this visit? He has very high expectations. Trump has given him credit before for achieving so much in Turkey, but Trump is also known for making 180-degree turns. Do you think, though, this meeting will happen the way Erdogan hopes?
If I had a crystal ball, I could tell you. I don't know. One would hope that a rational and reasonable solution to the situation will be able to be achieved, because at the moment what is happening south of the Turkish border is neither rational nor reasonable. And something has to change, and we can only hope that some kind of compromise or solution will be achieved.
Okay. Let's turn our attention now to Washington, D.C., and let's bring in Robert Amsterdam. He is an attorney representing the Turkish government in the legal fight to extradite Fetullah Gulen. Hi, Robert. Thanks so much for joining us. President Erdogan says very clearly he believes Trump can do what Obama couldn't do regarding Gulen's extradition. Are you as hopeful there?
Look, I think given what we've been seeing in Washington in the last few weeks, generally, I think any comment about what Mr. Trump is going to do on any given day is entirely speculative. I think that from Turkey's position, almost anything is an improvement over Obama. And, I want to be clear, the actual extradition issue with Mr. Gulen is a state-to-state issue. And certainly the Justice Minister, who's recently been here, has provided the United States with a tremendous amount of information, which is, I'm sure, quite compelling. So there is a possibility for a breakthrough, but again, it's going to be up to the Trump administration.
Help us understand, Robert, how sensitive might the U.S. public itself be to his extradition? Sometimes you get the feeling that there may be some upset in the immediate aftermath, if that they feel proper procedures weren't followed, even if they're not very familiar with the case. The U.S. public has said they don't want their justice system undermined. But do you think this man has enough public support in the United States for that kind of protest to linger? Or if he were extradited, could it be forgotten relatively soon?
The United States will not depart from the due process obligations in respect to Mr. Gulen. Turkey can hope that that process will begin, and that process, which is involving court hearings, has not begun. Mr. Gulen is unknown in the United States largely. His charter schools are well known, but hide the fact that Mr. Gulen is behind them. He has a massive criminal organization in the United States, making very significant political contributions, which means that some members of the elite will raise a tremendous amount of noise at any issue with respect to Mr. Gulen.
So what is ultimately, in your opinion, the diplomatic cost of keeping him in the U.S. and protecting him in the eyes of Turkey?
Well, firstly, there's a cost to American taxpayers, because the Gulen organization is stealing about $100 million a year. And that's a number, by the way, that we feel pretty comfortable with and that we can prove. So that's cost number one. Cost number two, in terms of the Turkey relationship, is, I'm sure, significant. but the Gulen penetration of the American political environment is also a tremendous cost to which America is not alive. And I think one of the tasks we're engaged in is making Americans aware of Gulen's penetration of their own political system here. Gulen is a threat to the national security of the United States. And I think when that's perceived properly, I think the United States' position on Gulen will change, because the other option to extradition is arrest for crimes committed in the United States.
So tell us why then, if you're presenting this case, as well as the evidence that Turkey says it's presented to merit his extradition to Turkey, why is the case still not strong enough?
Well, I would disagree with that characterization. Certainly, the case seems very strong. I think the issue is Gulen's massive political contributions and the portrayal that he's funding in the U.S. Of Turkey, which has been highly negative since the coup.
It's interesting. Jane, let me finish with you. I remember an AK Party member telling me, one of your colleagues, that we understand the U.S. justice system has its processes, she said, but we also know this is about politics, and that diplomatically there is a right and a wrong thing to do, and the U.S. should do the right thing. Why do you think that's not happening here?
There has been the transition to the new government, and Donald Trump has taken his time to sit in the seat and get his feet under the table and to decide what is being done. We can only hope that in these talks that will be happening as we speak, or in the next hour or so, that this will come up and that the American government will decide to do the right thing and that the due process will begin. Nobody in Turkey wants the due process to be hijacked or eliminated in any way whatsoever. We want the due process to begin, and if the evidence, which is strong, is found to be as strong as we know it to be, then we'd like to see justice be served.
Gune, give me your assessment. If both the YPG issue remains unresolved and Fetullah Gulen stays in the United States, where Turkey believes he's unfairly protected by the U.S. administration, where will the Turkey-U.S. relationship stand?
Well, I believe Turkey needs Washington, Ankara needs Washington as much as Washington needs Turkey at the moment, and both sides will see no benefit to, to have more tension between them. And I believe there is also room for the U.S. administration to use both YPG and Fethullah Gulen issue as leverage against Turkey. And we might maybe see down the line a point where U.S. can decide on, make a decision against Fethullah Gulen in order to get Turkey's approval to support operation with YPG. I believe the situation is not political, will not be political, the Fethullah Gulen issue, until the court case is concluded in the U.S. If the court case is concluded against Fethullah Gulen, then the president and administration will have a chance to extradite him or prevent his extradition. But up until that point, I think it's strictly legal, and Turkey's case will be stronger if the court cases in Turkey against Fethullah Gulen organization is concluded sooner, and that decision could be conveyed to U.S. and used to strengthen the case in the U.S. courts.
Robert, I'll let you kind of sum up then the Gulen issue here for us. Do you envision, is there a timeline for some kind of resolution on this matter?
Look, I believe there is, because the evidence in respect to Gulen's criminal activity globally is starting to grow. So my view would be that there will be, in the United States, actions that are going to go on in the next 6 months that will change the basic atmosphere around Gulen. So I see a lot of changes occurring in the next 6 months, which will, I think, inure to the benefit of Turkey's position in these diplomatic negotiations.
Okay, so there may be an end game in sight, Jane, for the Gulen issue, but on the YPG issue, if Turkey and the United States can't get on the same page, re-strategy in Syria here, what happens? First of all, will Daesh be defeated? And ultimately, will the Kurds get what Turkey thinks they're looking for, being an autonomous state in the north of Syria?
I think it's a mistake, first of all, to equate the PKK with the Kurds. The PKK only represents...
I'm sorry, the YPG.
Yes, the YPG, sorry, or the YPG with the Kurds. They only represent a small minority of the Kurds.
Okay.
And there are many Kurds in the southeast of Turkey who don't want what the PKK or the YPG wants. They don't speak for the Kurds. And this must be remembered that the YPG has taken over Arab villages and they've driven people from their homes. So there needs to be a solution as soon as possible which will respect the people who live in the region, their beliefs, their culture, and will allow people to go back to their homes as soon as possible.
Okay, then Gulen, let me put that to you. If there is not a resolution, if the United States continues to arm the YPG, what ultimately happens?
Well, first of all, the United States has to decide what kind of an administration will be in place north of Raqqa. Will it be a geographical federation, or would it be how it will be linked to the existing state administration in Syria? And the U.S. will also have to decide which groups, how the hierarchy of the administration in north of Raqqa will work, whether the YPG and their political wing PYD have the last say or strongly control the negotiation or political processes, or whether other groups, including other ethnic groups and other religious minorities, will be involved as well. But U.S., I mean, this area is relatively stable for the last few years, supported by U.S., and U.S. will find it very difficult to destabilize the region. But for ultimate stability in that region, regional actors would also have to be brought to the same page with the U.S., including Turkey, which is the main regional power there. And for that, if President Trump follows on what he had said during his campaign trail, which was to bring YPG and Turkey together to work with together, I think that will be a viable solution. And external actors could play, when there's a conflict, a regional conflict, external actors could play a role in bringing the actors, the fighting groups together, if they put enough pressure on both sides. Otherwise, external actors could also play a role in further dividing these actors. So I think the best solution would be to put pressure on each conflicting actor to change their attitudes towards each other and find a common ground.
Okay. Güne Yildiz, I'm going to give you the last word. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on the Newsmakers, as well as our guest Robert Amsterdam there in Washington, D.C., and Jane Condor for joining us here in the studio. Thanks so much.